say something? I'm testing.
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Check 1, 2, or whatever they do at audio concerts. Am I? Oh, sorry. If we're live online and you're hearing me say this, we have a brief technical delay due to lack of pizza at the beginning of the talk. Please bear with me. If we could email you pizza, we would. Oh, I know, right? Man. Someone's going to invent transportation. Teleportation. And the uses are not going to be like big and grandiose. It's like, I want pizza now. Whoa.
Well, like the height of our technical achievement can all be summarized by like ordering delivery pizza on your phone while watching Netflix.
Yes, absolutely. Or if someone tells you about a new book that in less than 60 seconds you've ordered it from Amazon and it's on your phone. Like, I personally love that. I know, right? Mm. Okay. All right, we're getting closer, guys. Okay, good. All right, hello and welcome. Hello. My name is Erik Gross. I'm the co-founder of the Tech Academy, and I really, really appreciate you all taking the time to be here today. I want to make sure I know who it is I'm speaking with, whether you're a student or you're a visitor and that sort of thing. So first of all, if you're a student of the Tech Academy, can you raise your hand? Okay, good. Excellent. For many of you, I think this will probably be the first time you've heard me speak, other than those videos that you're probably grown very, very tired of where you watch me speak. So I apologize in advance if it bores you because you've already seen me over and over again. For those of you who aren't students, go to raise your hands if you're not a student. Okay, good. Excellent. I want to give you a brief little blurb about who we are, what we do here, and then launch into the talk. I also want to know, though, who in the audience is not currently employed in technology but wants to be. Okay, good. Raise your hand if you are employed in technology. Okay, good. Excellent. So this is exactly the right talk for this audience. You showed up at the right place. Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, good. So first of all, just a word about what the Tech Academy is. And a friend of mine had a really good question. Why did we make this? Why did we start it? Okay. The Tech Academy is a software developer bootcamp. That's an immersive, intensive training program that can take you from knowing nothing about computers to being a well-rounded entry-level developer in about 4 or 5 months full-time. Which, if you think about it, whether it's our program or any of the other like 100 that there are in America, is an amazing concept. It really is a signal change in how education is done in America. It uses a lot of things that have been around for a while in various other industries, but in terms of technology, it isn't the established paradigm. It's not the way you normally train people. You either learn on your own through self-study, which is a nightmare, I've done it, or you go to college for 4 to 5 or 6 years, and then you need to figure out how to get practical skills. In other words, there hasn't been a thing that lets, just a bright person who's interested break into the industry. So whether it's our program or another, boot camps are pretty awesome in our estimation, and that's what we do here. Now, part of what happens when you do that is that you learn how to help people get jobs. But you learn a very particular type of individual. And what I mean by that is you learn how to help entry-level or junior-level developers get jobs, and that is not a normal evolution. Because we're responding to a great need for technical talent, and because we've had a lot of people sign up, we've been able to see a lot of people go through and get hired, and we've learned what does work and what doesn't work. So I'm going to give a talk that, well, I guess the target audience would be someone who's currently engaged in learning, be a computer programmer or some technology professional, and is going to try to get into that industry in the next few months, right? Even if that's not you, but you know people who are quite interested, I want you to walk away with a greater understanding of the challenges and advantages to trying to get into this industry. So the first thing I want to cover is just what the current situation is as regards technical talent, at least in America. We see it in other places around the world because we do, train people all over the world. But in America, what we're seeing is this: there is I'm going to give this numbers, but there is a great need for technical talent in all areas of the technology industry. And technology industry doesn't necessarily mean computer programming. It can mean project management, or being a business analyst, or being a data analyst, or being a data scientist, or educating people in technology. Everything related basically to computers as a tool and how they're used in modern society. There's a ton of jobs available in that area. It doesn't mean that if you learn the stuff and you go through a program, you're automatically going to get a job, but the need is certainly there. Now, to quantify it, rather than just saying there's a great need for it, one of the things I found out when I was looking at starting the school is, what is the actual scene right now as regards the industry? And this was, I guess, late 2012, early 2013. And at that point, there was a projection that was looking forward to the year 2020. So it was about 7 years into the future at that point. Okay, and this came from I think the Bureau of Labor and Industry, the federal one. I'll probably get the name or the acronym wrong because they have a lot of acronyms in the government. But basically, people that track employment trends and that sort of thing. And they were projecting that between that point, which was called the beginning of 2013, and the year 2020, that there would be 1.4 million newly created technology jobs. And they characterized them roughly the same way I did. But what they were looking at specifically is, okay, good, so there's going to be 1.4 million new jobs created. What's the production of that type of technical person available? And what they found is that at that point, before boot camps were a thing, that the available output of all the technical training organizations, primarily universities, colleges, and a few technical training organizations, was about 40,000 people a year. You take that out 7 years and you've got 280,000, and you're nowhere near what's needed. So I went, oh, there's a need for this. Well, it has worked. We are one of, like I say, about 100 boot camps. And in the first couple of years of boot camps being a thing, because they started about the summer of 2012, the output was measured in the few hundreds and thousands, right? But you go back a year or so, like 2015, I think there were 13,000 graduates from boot camps around the nation. And then last year, 18,000 graduates from boot camps around the nation. And while getting specific numbers is always an interesting activity, there's about an 85 to 90% average hiring rate for boot camps. Ours is in excess of that. We do quite well. But the point is, that need is not going away. If you look at the 18,000 that is being produced by this industry that we happen to be a member of, and the 40,000 from the higher education and the traditional methods, we're not even coming close to what's needed. Now, that doesn't mean you're automatically going to get a job, and that's what this talk is going to focus on. Is okay, great. So you've learned the fundamentals to be able to actually operate in that industry, and that what the fundamentals are and how to get them is a separate discussion. Obviously, we think our solution works well, but how you get that data is a separate thing. Then there's, okay, now I actually feel relatively comfortable. I feel like I can probably kind of do this job. How do I go about getting one? And that's what I'm going to give you data on today. Is that going to be helpful? Does that seem like something you guys would want? Okay, good, cool. One of the first things I want to acknowledge is that I'm not a junior developer. And so there can be a tendency to go, okay, well, let's look at the source of this information. I'm about to tell you a bunch of stuff about how to get hired as a junior developer, and I haven't been a junior developer in 30 years. So the thing I'd ask you to look at, if that is any kind of a consideration or thought for you, is that is the principal thing we had to solve at this school. Yes, we've solved curriculum, and we have a great curriculum. But if we can't help people get hired, it's all for naught. They had a goal when they walked in the door, and it wasn't to learn how to code. It was to work in that industry. So I paid very close attention along the way as we started it with just 2 people and then built it up to 25 staff. How is it that we're actually getting people hired? What are the real effective actions and not what I maybe thought they were when we first started? So this data is real world, and it comes from actually landing better than 90% of our graduates in technical positions, okay? And we're going to start now with practical tools like, how many resumes do I send out? How should I format my resume? How should I prepare for a technical interview? I'm not going to talk about the actual mechanical things to do before I address what is, in my mind, the most fundamental aspect, which is the viewpoint or attitude you have about the process. This is not something you can actually just, as a teacher, as an instructor, as someone who cares about helping people, you can't just automatically instill this in someone. There's data you can give someone in terms of being a computer programmer about how the computer works and what are the fundamentals of any computer programming language. We can ensure that that gets across to the student. But when it comes to this idea of your attitude and your viewpoint, all I've found is successful is just to ask people to look. Just be willing to look at maybe a different viewpoint than you've encountered. Because the viewpoint that most people have when they become what they would even loosely classify a junior developer, someone who, well, I kind of know a few languages, I know some of the fundamentals, I've worked on a few different live projects, I might be ready to try to dip my toe in the water and get a job. The viewpoint they have is that, honestly, to be quite blunt, they very often feel, wow, I don't know the first thing about what to do when I get on the job. I'm really scared that I'm going to get there and they're going to feel like I'm a fraud and kick me out a week later. I know that I'm going to be completely overwhelmed about asking people for help because I feel like I'm going to ask people for help every 5 minutes and they're going to get annoyed with me. These are the things we hear. They're very, very real. And why wouldn't they be? The reason software developers get paid a lot of money is because we solve very difficult problems. Now, not always, not every day. A lot of the time it's routine, but everyone will have, who's been in the industry more than 2 or 3 years, will have copious stories of times everything was routine and all of a sudden they or their team hit a wall, and it was a massive wall, and the business was utterly relying on them to solve a technical issue, and it was not fun to experience. They'll all have those stories, right? That's part of why we get paid well. But the reason people succeed even after they've been in a few years or in that first time you're trying to get that job really does have everything to do with your attitude and your viewpoint. And this is what I'd say to you about what this industry is like and some of the aspects of a successful point of view or attitude. One, this industry is full of really, really nice people. It's actually, that's not true for every industry. I have a buddy of mine who, from high school who is he's a pipe fitter. And he works around great people and also some rough and tumble people that are quite annoying and hard to deal with. And like the idea of physically coming to blows on the job site, for example, is a real thing he has to think with. The worst thing that's going to get exchanged between two people, like weapons, is annoying insults about Star Wars and Star Trek, okay? Like, you don't deal with that kind of thing in a technology job. You deal with kind, nice people, for the most part, who recognize that they are there to solve problems that no one else can solve. And rather than having an arrogant sort of attitude about that, they feel privileged that they get to contribute to the organization that much. And that's the kind of people you work with. So let's look at a couple things that might be true about people like that. One of the things that might be true about them is that they might really like helping people. They help the organization a lot. They probably help their fellow team members. So when someone new comes into their team, they actually, more often than not, might be inclined to help that person rather than leave them to fend for themselves, which is what I've found to be true. Another thing that might be true about this kind of a team or a technology group inside a company is that they all are completely fully aware that they don't know everything. In fact, they know, especially after a few years in the industry, the number of things that they don't know, it just eclipses what they do know by a factor of 1,000 to 1. They're very aware of this fact. Now, they're no longer intimidated by that fact, like someone who's just entering the industry might be. But it isn't like you go into the industry and then 2 or 3 years later, you're like, wow, I've got it all down. I pretty much know everything. This is going to be great. Work's going to be a cakewalk from here on out. It isn't that way at all. And it's a variety of things. This is a relatively new industry. Technology and computers and programming, it's only been around for 60 years. Look at technologies like, shipbuilding or, actually building structures or large towering structures or even airplanes, 100-some-odd years. There's been a lot of time in there for the maturity of that industry, right? We've been around for a few decades at most. It is a constantly changing industry. So for that reason alone, a person who's been in the industry 5 years, well, a bunch of stuff piled up that they don't know. But the other part of it is this, and it's something that I really recommend anybody looking at a technology career examine. You don't need to know everything. What you need to know is how to think. You need to know how to think like a software developer. You need to be able to look at a complicated system with intermeshing parts and have a methodology, an actual mental approach for how to achieve enough understanding of that you can at least dig in to a point that isn't working right and isolate the general area. And then take that general area and start dividing it systematically until you narrow the exact thing that's wrong. That's a little teeny bit of an example of how a software developer would think. But that's actually much, much more important than do I know this specific language? Do I know this exact, framework or set of tools for making web software? Those things are of secondary importance to how you think and whether or not you think like a computer. Now, I want a brief word on that, because you can hear that and go, well, I'm not a robot, I don't want to think like a computer. But here's what I mean. I've been giving a little bit of thought to this recently. Like, how do you impart to people why it is there would even be a way to think as regards technology? And there is. And if you've been in the industry for a little while, you start to see that, all the people you're working with, they sort of think about things the same way. Approaching problems, organizing activity, they start to think the same way. And the reason is it's because of the nature of the physical machine they're operating. They're operating a computer. Now, the thing is, they actually understand that computer. And they understand that physical machine, because it's just a machine. It may look like a magic box, but there's things inside that can be understood, that operate along very, very simple, clear principles. And because they understand the inner workings of that machine, the way they think is completely centered around what that thing can and can't do, what its functions are, how it was built and designed. And so that's why they think like computers. A parallel would be if you were looking at one of those, those driving lawnmowers that can turn on a zero axis like that. I love that. I think that stuff's awesome, right? So if you were going to try to operate one of those and learn how to, and you had somebody who was willing to kind of help you with it, they might do something along the lines of identifying some of the basic controls. There's a gas pedal and there's a brake, and here's where you turn it. And then if they were going to go a bit farther, they might flip it over on its side and show you underneath about, well, obviously that's the blade. Stay away from that, right? But look at the steering mechanism right here, and watch. I'm going to turn over here, and you see what that does, and you'd be able to see how and why it can actually turn on a zero radius, because our cars can't do that. It would be cool if they could, but our cars can't do that, right? How is it that this thing can? The point is that once you've had that level of understanding of it, and you've driven it around a few different times, let's say you've got to mow a brand new lawn, and you're going back and forth, and there's a nice established pattern, and then you look ahead, and there's a stump. You would approach that stump in a certain way. It might be a specific exact angle that lets you skirt around the edge of it as you try to cut that grass. But the point is, you would be approaching the problem with a certain point of view or attitude or thinkingness because you understood the tool that you were in control of. That's one of the things that's central about computers, is if you understand the actual tool itself at its most basic fundamental level, then you will never again think about them the same way, and you won't use them the same way, even if all you're doing is, using the actual computer programs rather than creating them. So, this is a bit far afield from how to get the job, so I'll pull it back to that. When you're looking at a team and you're like, you want to get that job, they are looking for people that they will get along well with. Yes, they want you to have certain fundamentals of knowledge. If you can't, demonstrate at least a little bit of competence in some of the 4 or 5 different types of tools that there might be as a computer programmer, then they're going to have a real hard time fitting you in, even if you're like the most friendly, awesome person in the world. But once they've established that you at least know a bit about some of the basic fundamentals, and have a little bit of record of doing some work that you can show them, now what they're really looking for is fit. And you hear this phrase all the time, would you be a good fit for our company, and that sort of thing. And that can mean different things in different industries. Here's what it generally means in the technology industry. It means someone that isn't afraid to ask for help. And conversely, isn't unwilling to help other people. Software development is a very collaborative activity. It is not a dry, boring, sit in a cubicle by yourself and just code all day long activity. To be sure, there are times where you'll have to do some of that. They call it heads down. Like you're just like, and everything else gets blanked off, and you're there solving a very specific exact problem, and please keep those distractions off to the side. But that's a small portion of what you do. Everything else is collaborative. It's teamwork. It's project planning. It's you have an entirely new feature set you need to add to a computer program, and you're going to want input from the business, the people that are going to use it, your software developer team, so that you do the best job of designing that thing before you even start writing code. The point is, it's a people industry, which is a fun thing for a lot of people to find out if they thought different. It's very much a live, people, dynamic industry to be in. But the point is, because that's most of what happens, that they're working with other people, software development teams are looking for a very specific sort of point of view or attitude about who they're going to have in their team. And there's some hallmarks to that. Like I said earlier, being willing to ask for help and being willing to help others is a really big part of it. But another part of it is an acknowledgement that you don't know everything, and that's completely okay. And that you're completely willing to learn. You're not afraid to dive into a thing. Just get your hands dirty with it. And have it be okay that you don't know everything at first. We've all encountered people like this where they won't start an activity yet because they don't know everything about what they're about to step into. That doesn't work in technology. You will never have that. As an example, I'm a senior software developer and I get called onto projects a lot. And they'll have whatever technologies are being used. Usually, I'm intimately familiar with, in terms of like heavy experience, maybe 20 to 25% of the technologies that are on that project. The other 75% are a mix of, I may have used it 5 years ago, but it's 3 or 4 generations in the future and it probably changed a lot. Or I've heard about that and I did a quick little project on the weekend to kind of see how it works. Or, yeah, I haven't gotten around to learning that yet. That's 75% of the technology. But that's what's true for everyone. It's true for the junior developer and it's true for the senior developer. So knowing that that's the case, as you start to say, hey, I'd like to be part of your team. I'm a junior developer, I want to be part of your team. Just, I think, knowing that that's the case should help because they're in the exact same boat you are. Every time they arrive on a new project, they don't have it all licked. They got to figure it out as they go. And so they are willing to learn and are forced to learn with every new project. They want somebody who's also willing to learn and not the person who is going to restrain themselves because they don't know everything already, or is going to take anything that's given to them in terms of advice and automatically counter it. And this is a real big one. This is one of the things where if you have that in you, that you naturally are willing to look at what other people ask you to look at, you're golden, and it helps tremendously in your career. If that's an issue for you, it's something to examine, in my opinion. If the first reaction you have when somebody tries to teach you a thing or tell you something that it counters against something you already had as a bit of stable data, if your immediate instinct is go, you're wrong and I reject you, and I'm unwilling to even look at what you're saying, you won't do very well in this industry. Now, thankfully, there aren't that many people like that in this industry. They don't do very well because they don't learn very well. They can't increase their, the scope of projects they can work on, and they're horrible to work with as part of a team. So if that's something that in any way, shape, or form you recognize in yourself, burn it with fire. Just kill it. It's not a successful mode of operation for a life, let alone a career in technology. Rather, for a career in technology, your immediate reaction to someone giving you something that is opposite of what you thought should be, oh my God, I might have a chance to clear up something that's wrong and I've thought incorrectly for a long time. You have an opportunity to grow. I can't tell you how many times, look, there could be a justifiable reason why I might have some altitude or arrogance or obnoxiousness about my technical skills. I've been programming since I was 11. I operated nuclear reactors in the Navy. I founded a software developer school. If I were that type of person, I could be an obnoxious jerk. And none of my friends better say I am, okay? Notice how I build myself up to show you how humble I am. So, but the point is that if I really was that kind of a person, where that altitude really mattered, I wouldn't have been able to build this school. And I'm going to give you a very concrete example of that also will illustrate why our school is so good. I am the techno geek. I'm the nerd. I have been programming computers since I was 11. I just think with this stuff. I love it, right? But I don't have, or didn't, about 5 years ago when we were starting this, the requisite business skill, the establishment of an organization, creating policies and plans and programs and organizing a thing. I didn't have that, and I knew I didn't have that, and I was willing to acknowledge that I had a lot to learn. So what I did is I found a business partner who was an expert in that. So Jack, my business partner, comes in, and he's busy establishing all that. He says, okay, I should go through the program. He's not a technology guy at all. A mason, fire water damage recovery, business development, that is his background. He actually didn't like computers and thought that I was a nerd and other people were nerds. So he said, I really should go through this curriculum. And so that would be great. And he starts on it, and he starts on our most introductory material that I've put together. And he crashes and burns on a few key points. And I looked at that, and I knew a couple of things. I knew that he was brilliant. Like, Jack's a very, very intelligent guy. And I knew that it was likely I'd missed something, and I was willing to acknowledge that. Now, what came out of that is arguably the most important course that's ever existed at the school. It's called the Computer Basics course. It's the very first course you do. And what this course does is it actually undercuts any previous approach there is to learning technology and computers and breaks the subject down to the individual. Any individual that walks in the door, as long as they do read, write, do basic math, and they're paying attention, they can remove all of the mystery from computers, technology, how these machines work. And that sets the foundation for being able to think like a computer. If we didn't have that course, we would not be able to achieve the results we have. And thankfully, I was willing to go, wow, I was a bit of an idiot. I kind of just approached this with a bunch of assumed knowledge on the part of the audience. You can't do it. It just doesn't work. If you can take that and just internalize that, look at ways when you're trying to break into this industry that could apply to you, where you would go, wow, there's a thing I don't know. Cool. Okay, tell me about that. You'll do well. And you can even do it in the interview. You can do it in the interview. I've gotten hired on jobs where 3 or 4 times key questions were asked of a technical nature, and I just miffed it. I actually didn't know. But it intrigued me. I'm like, what was that word you said? What is that system? I was genuinely interested. I saw an opportunity to learn something. And at that point, the first time it happened, at that point I knew I'd lost the job. I wasn't going to get it. So at that point, I'm just interested. What is that? What did you say? And he goes, oh, and starts getting into it. I'm like, oh, man, that's really, so that's like this other thing right here. And he goes, yeah, it is. Boom, done. He's handled. He was completely handled. I actually got the job. I didn't think it was going to. It isn't like, oh, Erik's awesome. I was not happy that I didn't know the thing. But I learned something. I learned the basics of what he was talking about, and he saw that that's my attitude when I encounter something I don't know. It's not to justify why I don't know it or it's not important, or tell you about, well, I can figure it all out, or in any way to start becoming intimidated and look inward. The immediate thing that I would do is go, oh, wow, I don't know that, and view that as a good thing. So all of this that I've been talking about is about mental viewpoint, mental attitude in terms of breaking into the industry. I want to now talk about a few of the specific, physical universe things you can do, the actual actions, but they reflect that kind of an attitude, okay? One of the things that I highly, highly recommend is find the aspects of the whole job obtaining process, the whole job search process that you hate, that you just absolutely are not looking forward to, and drill them over and over and over and over again. For many people, it's like a whiteboard interview. Like to stand up in front of these people you've never met, and they're going to ask you questions about your knowledge, and you're going to have to, you just live or die by how well you explain that. That can be a very intimidating thing for a lot of people. So don't have the place where you work out your skill level on that be in front of people on the job interview. Do it ahead of time. Find a fellow student or a fellow, if you're an amateur coder and you're teaching yourself, find another person who's equally interested. Look online and say, well, this is for SQL, structured query language. It's the language you use to get data into and out of databases. So what are the top 10 interview questions for SQL? Study on them a little bit, but then dive into it. Have a friend say, there it is, there's those questions, go ahead and ask me. And then you have to explain it to him. And if he doesn't get it, if you didn't explain it well enough, have him be honest and tell you. And then do it again, and then do it again, and then do it again. I'm not saying you can get to the level where you're like, hey, this is a piece of cake. But you will have at least worked through whatever initial fear, worry, upset you have that can be handled, and you're not doing it in front of the person who has to make a decision about whether or not they're going to hire you. The same thing can be true for the phone interviews, or an in-person interview where you're sitting in front of a panel, and there's 3 people there, or 5 people, and these are the people I'm going to be worked with. Like, come on, how could you not be intimidated? That's a tough thing for a lot of people. Drill it ahead of time. Literally have 3 of your friends sit across from a table and start asking you these technical questions. It's part of what our job placement directors do here to help people with that process, but you can be proactive about it. You can actually decide, I know the areas I don't do well in. Instead of hoping they don't do a lot in that area, why don't I just go, I'm going to attack that and do what I can to improve in that area. That does fall back to mental viewpoint and attitude, by the way. If there's an area of your life, of your professional life, work, whatever it is, that you're like, I don't want to look over there, that scares me, turn and look at it. Just like, no. Refuse to have that in your space. Refuse to operate that way. Why would you? Your capabilities are incredible. It's another thing to realize. You're very bright. The very fact that you're interested in this specific area with as much confusion as there is surrounding it, and much intimidation, and oh my God, it's this exalted level of knowledge, and there's so much to learn. The fact that you're willing to even look at this and go, you know, I think I might want to have a crack at that and see if I could do that. That's incredible, guys. It's absolutely fantastic. Don't ever lose that. That alone can be a foundation for success. And just on a personal level, I love people like that. I love people that go, yeah, wow, that intrigues me. It seems awfully intimidating. Let's start. You know, I think people like that are awesome. So you can learn anything. All this data, you could look at the most complicated section of code, and go, oh my God, I want to go to fall asleep. Every single thing in there is built on one simple fundamental or another, and those can be learned. Yeah, you stack up 100 of them in a row or 1,000 lines of code. Of course it looks like soup and you're confused. So don't start there. Start with, the 5 basic elements common to any computer program, which is one of the things we cover. And then when you're looking at that big giant mess, you go, okay, all right, so there's these stable things. There's got to be an entrance point for the program and an exit point. All right, well, it's just a script starting at the top and the bottom. So I have an entrance and exit. There's got to be variables. You have to be able to have a piece of data that you give a name, like color of the bike, that can change. I'm going to make a blue bike. I'm going to make a red bike. Where are the variables? Oh, all right, some variables that are up there at the top. Okay, good. Oh, and you look at the names of them, and hopefully the person who's writing the code was intelligent enough to make them mean something. It won't be a variable named, Q23. It would be like color of the bike, And then there's more. You'll learn these fundamentals, but the point is, none of this can't be learned. There's not a person in this room that can't learn everything I've learned. So just know that about yourself. That is a real important thing to know about yourself. You can learn anything, and you can solve any problem. What's fun about this job is you get to do that with a really cool team. I can't think of a software development shop I've worked in Portland that I haven't had tremendous respect for the guys. It's gone really, really well. Every once in a while, you have one person that's a bit of a sticky wicket. I think is that British term? Like they just doesn't move and with the team very, very well. But that's like, okay, fine. A little bit of nice human communication with the person and be kind to them, and they'll do well, So that's, again, back on viewpoint. A bit more practical tools, okay? Is drilling thing is key. Find the thing that you're not good at and drill it. The other one, though, I kind of alluded to, you can know ahead of time a lot of the most common questions you're going to be asked. Because look, picture the people that are going to interview you. How much do they really want to be there? How much is that their core job, okay? They're not going to often arrive with resentment that they have to do it, although sometimes that can be there. And so to the degree that you're friendly and nice to them, it makes it easier for them. But it's not their core job. Their core job is development, project management, business analysis. And every once in a while, they need someone new for the team. So they put together, a little 3-panel, 5-panel, whatever, and they're going to interview a person, right? Since their job isn't interviewing, since their job is coding or whatever else, they're not going to have a big old stable of questions they're already thinking of. They're solving what they're solving in code. They're going to do the same Google search you're going to do. And they're going to come up with the same questions. So you actually know the answers ahead of time on some of this stuff, which is kind of cool. So do that. Start looking for what are the most common questions for, there's a programming language we teach here called C#. What are the most common project management questions? What are the most common JavaScript questions? You're going to know ahead of time what technologies that they're going to ask you about. Do that. And you'll know most likely what they're going to ask. And frankly, that's the technical stuff. Everything else they're going to ask is going to speak to, are you a fit for that group? Do we think that bringing this man or this woman into this team is going to expand how well the team works, not just from the technical knowledge they bring, but from who they are, how they approach problem solving. And this is why you'll get these very valuable soft skill questions, like tell me about a time you had a problem with a team member and how you handled it. My advice on those things, be raw and real and tell the truth. You do not want to sit there and kind of cover up. If you screwed up, you screwed up. I was working at Providence about 5 years ago, and the lead developer, one day, while we could exercise at lunch because they had a built-in exercise place, and we're there, and I see him exercising, and I leave, and then I come back, and he's sitting at his desk, and he looks gray. He just looks like death warmed over. I'm like, Ryan, what happened? And he just waved me away. He had an aneurysm. He's fine. He's fine now, and he's working, and everything's fine. But there were 3 months where he was in the hospital, and they thought maybe his cognitive ability was going to be gone. It's a guy who, it's his mind is how he provides for himself and his family. And so it was a very scary time. So they said, Eric, you've been here 2 weeks. You're the lead developer. Oh, wow. Okay. And they partnered me up with a female developer who, great lady, but we were both just diving in and like, we're awash in a sea of confusion because we were never going to be the lead developer on this thing. And there was one afternoon where she was talking about a specific item of data in a big giant collection and what type of data that was, what type of numeric data that is. And I thought she was wrong. And she kept saying it. And I said, can we just stop talking about this? Now, my friends who know me will recognize that that's pretty flippant out of character for me. And I knew it right away. It seems like a minor thing. You probably observed a lot worse behavior in different work situations. But for me, and how much I love people, and how I like to treat people, and how I like people to treat me, it was completely not okay. And she shut down a little bit, and I could feel it for the rest of the afternoon. Not my proudest moment. I've got lots others I'm not proud of too, okay? But in terms of working with a team and actually building people up rather than cutting them down, it was not the nicest thing to talk about. A year later, I'm being interviewed for a job, and they asked that exact question. What's the time you had a problem with a teammate, and how did you handle it? And I went, what the hell? And I just said it. And there was about 5 seconds of silence after I said it. You know, 5 seconds of silence on a phone interview can be really weird, right? And the guy said, that's the most honest answer I think I've ever heard to that question. I went, okay. So there's just a lot to be said for being who you are. You don't need to pretend to be someone artificial or anything. If who you are is friendly and outgoing, then just be that. If who you are is, you know, a bit more withdrawn and, you know, just analyze things and then move forward, be who you are. It comes across so well, and that's what people want to work with. They want to know, who's this person really? And when you find that fit, if you've just been being yourself, and hopefully they are as well, they got nothing to lose. You can say, yeah, this is who we are. You find the most amazing, cool teams. It's really great. And it gets really collaborative, and you start to build up your skill set as a developer. You find opportunities to mentor people. It's made safe when you don't know a thing. So you have this fantastic opportunity to learn a new thing. You know, it works out really well. So just be yourself. We're approaching the end here, so I'm going to open up to question and answer. And I have talked at you for 40 minutes. Thank you for being so patient. But just a couple more things on the practical elements of getting the job. It takes persistence. And that's persistence in capital letters, 10 foot tall. I know I said what I said about how many jobs are available. But finding that fit that I just talked about for all these minutes, that can take some time. Because it is a fit on both sides. You do want to find that place that the way they think and operate really does align with how you think and operate. It's really not comfortable being part of a team that isn't like in sync like that. And positions come and go and are approved by budget, and then the budget gets ripped out beneath them. Or the description that the hiring manager gave and what it actually is turns out to be completely different. There's so many reasons why a job position that you think you're about to like be in the running for, or looks really awesome, can go sideways and you don't get it. They're hardly ever you. That really isn't it. There's that tendency, as soon as it happens, no one likes rejection. No one at all. Me, just like you, been rejected many times. It's not fun. But part of this job search thing you have to steel yourself for is you'll get 5, 10, 15, 20 no's to every one yes. It just happens, even with all those jobs that are available out there. And again, it's not because the jobs aren't there. You're going to see the advertisements for them, and you're going to be putting your resume in. And it isn't because you're you and there's something flawed about you. We need an exact correct fit for a technical team to work well. I'm speaking now as a hiring manager. A person has to has had to put together teams. And as much as you might like a person personally, that's part of the equation. If the skill set is completely out of their wheelhouse and they're going to have a real difficult time with it, you can like them, but it's not going to work. On the flip side, you can have a person that, like, everything technically looks fantastic. When you're talking to them, and all they're talking about is how wrong things went on their previous projects and how it was, whether they stayed outright or not, it was always someone else's fault. You're like, oh, I don't care if he or she has all the technical data, technical knowledge. I don't want that as part of my team, right? There's a lot of different factors. It will take a lot of work typically in the job. You hear these awesome, like, stories of someone that, you know, sent out 3 resumes and got 2 inquiries, and then they got hired on, you know, all within a week. It's not typical. Don't let that be your standard. Persist. Just be unkillable. If you get knocked down and you feel like crap, find someone that you really like cares about you and just vent for a minute, but then get back up again and keep walking forward. The rewards for making it into this industry, I personally consider them fantastic. I don't ever worry about money. Right? Money isn't everything at all, but it's what it lets you do. It lets me help my kids to be really well educated. It lets me, you know, support humanitarian causes. Eventually, it will let me get my Tesla, and there is no higher aspiration in life. And in that statement, you just found out all of Erik's priorities. So, what I want to do now is open it up a bit to Q&A, because, like I said, I've talked a lot. And by the way, I think you probably already know this about me without my saying it. You can ask me anything. I'm not worried about any kind of question or this or that, or whether you think it's a stupid question. There's no such thing. So anybody who has anything, just ask me. Yes? That's a stupid question.
I'm in my upper 50s looking to get into this. Concerns?
Oh,
Thoughts?
I love this question. So for those of you who are online, he said, I'm in my upper 50s looking to get into this. Any concerns or any comments on that? Yeah, you're in one of the few industries that won't be an issue, which is really unique because I know it is in a lot of industries. Now, I want a little bit of caveat on that. First of all, I'm not blowing smoke. This is an industry where they don't very much care about what color your hair is, your gender identity, whether you were born in the sign of Cancer, you know, whether you're from the South, or they don't care about any of these things. Okay. I love the South, by the way. I'm married to Cajun, so I hope I can be forgiven for that. They don't care about that. They care about the things I said earlier. Are you a friendly, nice person who's willing to learn and doesn't automatically reject data and has enough of the fundamentals that they can move forward and be part of a team? That's what they care about. Can you do the job, and do we want to work with you? Okay. Now, the caveat is if it matters to you, it'll matter to them. If that is a consideration that's in your space, oh, I'm too young, or oh, I'm a woman and it's hard to get hired in technology as a woman. Or if those things are a consideration or a worry of yours, that will come across. My observation in the industry is that those things factually aren't true. I've worked with 72-year-old developers. I've worked with young punk kid 19 years old, right? I've worked with women, with men, with people of color. Like those things are very much. Developers are pretty cool, okay? We really, really admire bright thinking people and problem solvers. And the outside wrapping that comes in, we couldn't care less. It's when that connection happens, like, oh my God, yeah, we could do it this way, and boom, that was a really good idea. We're speaking directly to the person at that point. That's what we care about. Now, that's a big generality. It's not always true. And you may very well find that someone that's like, I got to see when you graduated, high school, and I'm not technically allowed to ask your age, but are you going to need Metamucil on the job? You might find people like that, right? But for the most part, if it's not a worry for you, it won't be for them. They just want to know you're a nice person and can you code, and do I want to have you as part of the team? Does that help?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Absolutely. Yeah.
Outside of, I know that this is kind of a preparatory course for entry-level developers, but does any of your curriculum cover data science or specific just kind of curriculum on machine learning and big data and all those buzzwords?
Decent question. And again, I have to repeat these because we have people watching all over the world right now. He essentially asked in terms of this being basically a preparatory program for people to become well-rounded entry-level developers. Does the curriculum have any address to things like data science, big data, machine learning, this sort of thing? And the answer is yes or no, yes and no, and I'll clarify. The fundamental purpose that we have here is to turn out a well-rounded entry-level developer who can at least get hired, and quite frankly, from that point forward, he or she is being paid to learn, which is an awesome position to be in, by the way. To get paid $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year and learn on the job and on your off time is awesome. Okay. That said, there are a few different areas that yes, they are popular. You know, cryptocurrency. You know, obviously, you know, machine learning and big data. There's another one. There's these areas that like Internet of Things, all these kind of things, right? Yeah, they're buzzwords and everything, but they're a real thing, and there's jobs available there. Here's what I've found about those specific sort of niche things is, this is purely my opinion, but I've watched every graduate go through here. I think we do a pretty good job of putting in the fundamentals of the machines themselves, the basic elements common to any computer program, and working knowledge of the 5 different basic tools there are for a developer. You need, by the way, because I've referred to those twice, you need to have a scripting language, a computer programming language that you can just write a procedural script that starts at the top and does a bunch of steps, all in order like a recipe, right? You need to have tools related to web development. Primarily, there are things called web application frameworks. A web application is a very complex website that actually provides a lot of business functionality and not just a static, boring real estate website. A web application framework is a set of pre-made computer code. Someone else did all the work, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and it handles all those fundamental things that any web application would need. There's tons of them, but there's probably a handful of 5 or 10 that are extremely popular, and if you know one of them, your ability to then learn another is quite good. You're going to need to have what's called an object-oriented programming language. Object-oriented design is a specific point of view or organization approach to creating computer software, okay? And I'm not going to get into a big definition of this. That's something for our dictionary that we're going to publish next month, okay? And you'll need the fundamentals of creating web pages. You've got to have HTML, which is hypertext markup language, and you have to have CSS, that's cascading style sheets. These involve the creation of and styling of web pages. You've got to have those things, right? And you've got to understand at least some of the fundamentals of hardware, because we run these programs on physical hardware, right? So if you have those things or examples of each of them and you arrive at a new job, well, then you can correlate what they're using with the fundamentals that you need. And that's what we turn out as a graduate. But what that means, to come full circle and return to your question, is that if you are looking at a position that involves data science or that sort of thing, machine learning, our graduates have found that all it is learning the specific nomenclature and systems of that domain, that area of operation, and they're in a very good position to do so. Now, if there were a bit of a step up where there's a whole second boot camp just related to data science, that would be awesome, and there are a few of them in the country, right? I think over in New York, there's one that's actually a hybrid with a university where it's a year-long program and you get some sort of certificate or degree or whatever in data science when you're done. So the short answer is that no, we don't have that. We're teaching the fundamentals so people can get into those kind of roles. There is, however, a big data course that's an additional optional course you can do after you complete that does handle at least the fundamentals of that area that would prep you really well for interviewing for those jobs or doing your own projects in that area. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, you did an excellent job.
Okay, good. It was rather long-winded. I apologize. Yes.
Excuse me. As I've been networking, a lot of people have asked me like what part of the industry I'm looking to get into, and I'm really kind of like, I'm a junior developer. I just want to expand my skills. So I'm wondering, how important is it to have kind of that idea of like, I want to work in this niche market or that niche market, and really know those details when trying to apply for jobs?
Okay. Probably you're close enough to the microphone that they picked it up, but I'll just clarify for our online viewers. She's essentially saying that as she networks, she's had people ask, what part of the industry does she want to go into, and can I address how important it is, or what are the factors involved in having like that idea of a niche sort of area of it that you're going to go into. And by it, I mean the industry. And that is a good question. This is my opinion, and that's all it is. You're not really going to know the area you want to settle in until about 18 to 36 months in the industry. roughly, okay? We're going to give you a lot of data here, and if you're doing your own self-study, you're probably encountering a lot of data. And we're trying to prep people to be able to work in as broad a cross-section of types of jobs as possible. But the fact of the matter is there's no substitute for just doing it for 6 months, a year and a half. Partly because you're going to build up your skill set and your confidence, but what you're also going to see is all the different roles that surround this whole technology area. We've had people, for example, that go out and their first job is developer, but then they watch that project manager who's helping to run everything and go, my God, I love what that role is. What she's doing in being a bridge between us technical, geeky developers and all the language and stuff we speak and how complex it is, and the business and the end users who this is all a mystery to them. She's bridging that gap so well, and look at how helpful she is. I want to do that. And they pivot. And by the way, people who have any skill as a software developer make incredible project managers if that's something they're quite interested in. But the point is, you can't really know how that's going to be until you've been in that environment and watched all these different roles. So my recommendation is not to pigeonhole yourself too much into any one specific business segment or a specific role within this whole technology arena, but just, you don't want to say, I'll do anything, you know? I mean, if you have a bit of a bent towards web development, let them know that. I really like working on like the front end of the visual appearance of web pages, or if you can't stand that, then if your area is databases and the logical organization and relationship between different types of data, then say that. But yeah, don't pigeonhole yourself at the beginning. You'll know when it comes to you. You'll find that part of the industry where you're like, oh, I naturally keep gravitating towards this. I love this. And then you start to really increase your stability and certainty in that area. You can start to command really good money. Does that help answer that?
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
I work in the software development industry, and I can say you're definitely not blowing smoke. The technical skills you need to develop and the foundation that teaches you how to learn can come to you and can be taught to you, but then the skills interacting with other people, being able to critically problem solve are definitely the most important thing.
Thank you for that
I
backup.
agree
You're
with
absolutely
that.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And it is. It's fun, isn't it? When a
awesome.
team solves a thing, it's awesome. And no one person goes, yeah, I solved that. They're like, no. You know that you wouldn't really have been able to do it without anybody else. Yeah, there's times when it's 3 o'clock in the morning, nobody else is working, and I'm like just banging my head against something when I solve it. I feel awesome! But why did I let the project get to the stage where I had to stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning, you know? Could there be a bit more collaboration ahead of time? One of my favorite t-shirts says, weeks of coding can save you hours of planning. Because unfortunately, it's true. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Kendra.
We have an online question from CJ Jones.
Okay.
She asks, she says that she has a tendency to overanalyze situations when coding. What's the best way you would suggest to counteract that?
I can address this. By the way, can the other online viewers see that question having been typed out? Okay, so for the people online, I'm addressing CJ Jones's question. Okay. This actually speaks to something really important to know when you're going out there and becoming a junior developer. There's always a better way to do something. And better is going to be in quote marks. Here's what I mean. We'll take as an example the learning management system that's used here at the school. I built the first learning management system, which is our online portal that guides people consecutively through all of their training, right? I built it over a period of about a week 3 years ago. And it was a hack job. Like, I just got the product and it worked. And that was about all I was concerned with. But I want to explain why, because it speaks to exactly what she's bumping up against, right? You have to look at the situation before we had that hack job that Erik made. The situation we had was, we're quite nimble as an organization. We can change our curriculum just like that, which is awesome. But what it led to is occasionally the version of a training material item that a student was working on was 1 or 2 generations behind an edit I had made. And it would just drive me up a wall because we have this iterative, repeating process of continually upgrading the curriculum. We care about it passionately. And so for someone to have something that, well, it may have worked 2 months ago, but it isn't what I wanted it to be and what's most effective, and that's what they're studying, would just kill me. I would hate it because we were just passing around different generations of Word documents. And so the thing that this solved was everybody had one central source for what the material was they were going to study. And if you wanted to change something, you log into the back end of it, and you change it, and 30 seconds later it goes live. So the fact that it wasn't the most gorgeous user interface, and they didn't have any of the awesome stuff we'd really like being able to track exactly where every student is at each point on all of their courses, and run analysis reports, and be able to have an instructor communicate with students and vice versa, all built into this one thing. It wasn't one ring to rule them all or whatever, right? Yes, I'm a nerd. But it worked, and it solved a problem in a way that vastly improved the organization's operation at that time. So this overanalysis thing, this example bears directly on it, because about halfway through the project, as I just started to make it work somehow, any which way, I started to have a concept of what's the ideal way to make this learning management system. And by ideal, I mean to be so well designed that it's not just built for the tech academy, but it's a product that could be sold to any training organization where they could create their own courses and lead people through and have different types of assignments. In other words, it isn't a tech academy learning management system. It's just a learning management system that uses everything we've learned here. And that just started to happen while I was developing this hack job. I could have stopped right then, overanalyzed how to make this whole thing happen, and greatly delayed the tool that my staff really needed. And I didn't. Because I've done stuff like that before, and I learned my lesson, right? So the point is, there's always a better way. And once you start solving a problem, you're always going to come up with a little refinement or how it could be a different thing. Just make something that works. Particularly when we're talking about the approach of a junior developer when you get out on the job. This is a really important thing to keep in mind. One of the cheap things that a junior developer can do that's of great value is to be given some sort of a coding assignment and just produce something that works. Because once it works, a senior developer with greater experience or a deeper understanding of computer science fundamentals and the efficiency of different data operations or whatever it is can come in and go, okay, boom, and I watch it work. Well, I see what you're doing here. Oh, switches out part of it with a much more efficient option and goes, now run it. But he has a working framework to operate in that you made, and that's of incredible value, because otherwise he's got to come up with all that on his own and try to optimize it, because at this point he's a senior developer. He's like, I'm going to put out super optimized code just to begin with, right? Or whatever he has to think. But the point is, you give him a working installation to operate on, and that's of great value. So, CJ, to directly answer your question, the solution to not overanalyzing is to stop overanalyzing. But what I mean is to recognize that the problem you're trying to solve by just looking at it from 19 different ways from Sunday isn't a problem that actually needs to be solved. Just find a way, any way that makes it work, and then go from there in terms of refinement. So I hope that helps. If you get feedback from her, let me know. Okay, good. Other questions? Yes?
What are the odds of there eventually becoming a master coding language that drastically reduces the job field and makes 8-year-olds the best coders on the face of the earth?
I love this question. It is a one ring to rule them all question. So for those people online, he said, what are the odds essentially of there being developed one master computer programming language that kind of handles everything and makes it so 8-year-olds can code and that sort of thing? This is a trope or thing that just kind of an idea that travels through society. It's been around since about 1957. I first hit it in 1982, about a year after I learned to code. I'm reading, I think it was either Popular Science or Omni magazine, and there's an article about, early research has, put out the idea that there might be a master computer programming language, and specifically, the creation of computer programs could become so automated that it would no longer be a need for computer programmers, right? Pardon my French, but it's crap. It's just completely unfounded. Now, that isn't just going to be, okay, Eric has an opinion, because I got lots of opinions. What it is this,
That's what I want to hear.
it speaks to why there is more than one type of computer programming language. It has everything to do with the purpose behind the language. Coincidentally enough, I was recording a video for our second course, Overview of Software Development, on this exact thing last week, and so this is fresh in my mind. Let's take an example of two different types of computing tasks. One would be creating just a static web page. And if you think of a static web page, that means that no content on that page can change without doing something that makes your computer contact wherever that website is located and send new data. So for example, if you're looking at a picture of a calendar there and it says these are your events in August, but you'd like to see September, then you can't get September's without changing something to say September, clicking go. Your computer will contact a web server in Keokuk or wherever, send new data, and that gets shown on your screen. So that's a static page. That's not that super helpful. Wouldn't it be cool if instead you could actually just, without having your computer have to contact anything, just roll over the month you wanted to see and the image would change? That'd be kind of cool. I'm sure we've all seen features like this, and you're like, yeah, Eric, they've solved that 20 years ago on the web, right? But the point is, they did solve it. They needed a way to be able to not just have like these static brochure sites, like I'm seeing a real estate agent's listings and they don't change until someone goes to the behind the scenes part of the website and changes them. We need something that's dynamic. There are two different computer languages that are at work here. For creating the actual page itself, the static page, the text and the images and the videos, the primary language there is called HTML. I referred to it earlier. It means Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext, by the way, is a piece of text on a page that connects to some other document. That's what hyper, meaning beyond. That text, when you click on it, as we all know, it takes you to another document, right? Markup is instructions regarding the appearance of text rather than the text itself. The one that you can think of most commonly is italicize. If you want to make something in italics, you're not typing the word italic, you're saying, please do something special to this piece of text on the page. Make it slant, right? That's called markup. So here you have this language called Hypertext Markup Language, HTML, and that's what you use to compose these visual things called web pages with text and images and video and all that kind of stuff. But again, it's only the way it was programmed, and you can't change it. Enter a language called JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is really kind of cool. JavaScript can do a special thing. It can say, I'm going to have, instead of this static representation of text and video and images or whatever, I'm going to be able to have a little computer program decide, based on user input or other factors, what gets put on that web page. So for example, it could be the kind of thing where you roll over the different months and it changes automatically for you. You have to have a computer program capture the fact that you rolled over a specific element on that page, and that rollover triggers some actual computer code that looks up, oh, they rolled over September, and it goes and grabs data, and then it creates, on the fly, the markup to change the appearance of that calendar. Now, again, we're all totally used to this because all pages have this now, but they didn't at first. It was a real problem. If you wanted to change the calendar, you literally have to bring in a web programmer. They create a new calendar, change the whole web page, and now you just paid him umpty squat dollars, which was great for our job security. But here's the point is, those are two completely different functions, and they have two completely different computer programming languages. Now, at the end of the day, each of those languages, HTML or JavaScript, when they need to be used by a computer, there's special programs that convert all of that stuff, regardless of the language, down to the actual instructions that computer is allowed to operate. That's called machine language. Okay? And those of you who've gone any distance into our computer programming curriculum here, they know these terms already, right? But the point is, while they might all get turned into the same thing that computer can operate on, they look completely different to the programmer because they're solving different issues. You're not going to find a computer programming language that maps to both things. You need a completely different style of doing analysis, if, then, else, that sort of thing, when you're dealing with JavaScript and dynamically creating visual elements, than if you're dealing with something that just says, please display a page that looks like this. There's no if, then, else about it. It's just make a visual presentation. So you can have two different languages for that. And so that's an example why that will never happen. You aren't going to have one computer language that you can, in the most optimal manner, that's the most used to the software developer, solve all of those things. Does that help?
Yeah, the efficiency, the optimal manner part is...
Exactly.
Yeah.
You could do it. You could actually use JavaScript to create a web page completely from scratch every time. You want to kill yourself because it's the wrong language. You can use JavaScript that creates hypertext markup language, but in little bits and pieces, not the whole page. Okay, good. Does that help? Yeah, good. Great. Yes, Kendra.
Annie Bauman online asks, when applying, how do we best address the minimum qualifications of a CS degree and or minimum 2+ years experience, especially with only bootcamp level of education in comparison?
Perfect. Okay, good. For you online people, I'm answering Annie Bowman's question about addressing experience and minimum requirements. So, true confession time, I don't have a computer science degree. I have a lot of training. I was in the Navy in the nuclear power program, and they taught me all kinds of fundamentals of the area, but it's not a computer science degree. Degrees apparently matter to people, except they don't. This is a dirty little secret of the computer industry. No one actually really cares when it comes down to it. And I know I'm probably speaking sacrilege, and there might be a few isolated people that disagree with me, but I've been hired over and over and over and over again for jobs that say requirement, computer science degree. The number of times I've been asked whether I have a degree or not is 0. They don't even ask. Now, I don't know if that's everybody's experience, but it's mine over decades. They don't care. Now, it isn't that they don't care, and here and there you'll find people, especially people who have computer science degrees, profess to really care a lot, right? And they have a right to, from a certain point of view. There's a level of depth of theoretical knowledge that can be extremely valuable that only a computer science degree is going to give you, which is why you need to continue learning voraciously once you graduate from a boot camp. But in terms of it saying that on a job description and how to overcome that, roll right over it. Just ignore it. It's my advice. I've never had it come up at all, right? Hold on just a second on that, right? The second thing, though, speaks to the years of experience, and this is a really important point. There's 2 things about getting positions as a junior developer, okay? One is that they aren't actually advertised that often, so networking is incredibly important. Very often what you'll find, for example, is this. You have a recruiting agency, and they get a requisition. They call it a rec, right? A requisition from one of their clients. Let's say it's IBM, and IBM says, I need 2 senior software developers. So then they call the hiring manager up. Oh, I saw this requisition, can you give me a little bit more detail? And they have a conversation about it. And then the hiring manager says, I didn't really put it in here, but we could use a junior guy or girl if you have anybody on your table like that. And that's how they find out. They're not going to go through the expense and the advertising and whatever, but they find out. And since you're in communication with that that recruiter, you find out about them. That happens quite often, okay? But in terms of the actual job descriptions, they're written by people who aren't developers. Almost all the time. They're written by human resources professionals. Now, if there's one thing that I know about human resources professionals, and I don't know that it's true, but I'm being a smartass, they get paid by word count. That's what it seems like, right? The more things they can put on there, the better they're looking out for the company. This is, I'll take a less obnoxious viewpoint about it. They're putting out the ideal scene. They're saying, if a unicorn walked in, this is what the unicorn would look like. I haven't seen a unicorn yet. Honestly, look what I just said earlier. I'm a senior software developer, and when I arrive on a project, I usually know about 25% of the technologies they have there. But they hire me. Why? Because what the human resource professional thinks the company cares about is completely different, in almost all cases, from what the actual technical team gives a crap about. And you find this great disconnect between the written description of what's going to happen, what's needed for the job, and what the actual technical people are looking for. So it isn't like this isn't an issue and you can just roll right over that. But please know that when it says this number of experience, our years of experience and all that, they really are just guidelines. And once they establish that you at least know a little bit of the fundamentals and that you're a decent person and that the recruiter knows they're not going to be embarrassed by sending you to do an interview, that kind of thing, now you've got your foot in the door. And once you have your foot in the door with a phone interview or an in-person interview, now you have the chance to let them know who you are, right? And very few organizations will just shut the door so strongly on, oh my God, you don't have 7 years of, MVC experience. I had this once. MVC, by the way, is one of those web application frameworks. And I remember about 5 years ago, seeing on a job description, they were looking for people that had 5 or more years of experience in MVC. It had been around for about 24 months at that point for Microsoft. So that would be awesome. Hi there, I'm a time traveler. Let me tell you what's going to happen in the future. The Cubbies win the series. So, sorry, spoiler alert. So the answer to this really is yes, they're there, and you don't want to poo-poo them or like go into the interview and say, I know it said blah, 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 but probably that's crap or whatever. You know, don't have an attitude like that. But recognize that there is often a disconnect and that you are not going to get hit or hurt or laughed at or made wrong for throwing your hat in the ring. Apply for that job. Be willing to have that phone interview. I told you before, I've muffed so many phone interviews, man. It's like, oh my God, Eric, you walk and bang your head against the wall. And then for every one of those, there's 30 of them where I do great. Which are the ones that kind of stick? We all know, right? So that's my attitude on that, or my point of view about that in terms of the degree and the years of experience. Throw your hat in the ring. They want to find out who you are, how you think, and whether you'd be a good member of the team. Yes?
We had a speaker a couple weeks ago that highly recommended a recruiter. Do you recommend possibly a recruiter? And aren't they pretty expensive too?
This is another great question. He asked essentially, is there a recruiter I recommend and aren't they expensive? Recruiters don't cost you anything. This is a real important thing to know. I love recruiters. I played a very specific game over the last many years. I was interested in making more and more and more money for some various things I wanted to handle, okay? And I looked at it and went, you know what? If I can be brave or foolhardy enough to do a 6-month contract and when it's over, find another one that pays more and then find another one that pays more, maybe that'll work. I did that, and I think in a 4.5-year stretch, I was without work for the longest period was 4 days without work. So I made it work, but I was also really aggressive, and I come to the table with communication ability that it's really valuable in a lot of organizations. So that helped me a lot, right? Hold that thought for a second, okay? But the reason that worked for me is because I cultivated really strong, genuine relationships and friendships with 2 or 3 recruiters over that time period. The vast majority of them, I was viewed as a number. I was a commodity. I was a developer. They need a developer. I'm a developer whose name happens to be Eric, and I could probably fit into here. The ones that I really liked didn't do that. They actually took the time to sit down and really get to know me. We've all got our own things going on in life. We've got our restrictions or goals or purposes, and like they found out who I was. Vanderhouen, I'll just be public about it because I love these guys so much. Vanderhouen and Associates, they're down on Macadam, is a fantastic organization. I've never had anything but wonderful experience with them. I've probably been placed by them 5 times for the last 5 years, and they're wonderful, right? There's a few other places. A lady named Karen Rice, who is over at Maine's Brady, is a dream. Primarily, they deal with senior developers, right? But the point is, it doesn't matter whether it's like one that Eric said or not. I just happen to find a fit with those organizations. Look for someone. Do work with recruiters. They're awesome. But find one that is genuinely interested in you. Like, who are you? What are your goals? This question that you had, like, what area do you want to go in? They can be great value for that. They can find out what you really like doing and give you great advice. But if they're not personally interested in you as an individual, walk away. That's my recommendation. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. You had a question.
I have a question. Going back to the previous one about experience and requirements for jobs.
Yeah.
I'm switching industries. I graduated in mathematics, and I don't have a ton of resume stuff to deal with coding. What would you say is the minimum you should try to get to about personal projects to put on your resume, or like I'm doing self-education, what should I put on there to be able to go for my first interview?
This is good. Okay, you're doing self-education, so this is a different approach than the boot camp, but I do know how the successful actions in this arena. He's basically, for our online listeners or viewers or whatever, he's basically saying, from his point of view, being self-study and not having much of a resume that indicates a lot of experience. What's the minimum sort of like projects to be done or practical experience to show on the resume before you're a viable candidate? Is that a pretty good way to say it? Okay. If you've got 2 or 3 things on there that are actual real projects and can either be pointed to or can be described to you with a good level of detail, you're gonna be golden, right? And the way to get those when you're doing self-study Open source projects absolutely sign on to those. They love the help, right? Just collaborative, awesome people, right? And just make a thing, but have it be a real thing. I mean, here's what I mean. You can look online and find all kinds of tutorials for all these different computer programming languages, and you can do those. And if you're doing self-study, you should be doing those. It's like a guided tour through that technology stack, right? That set of technologies, right? But at some point, you want to make something that's just your creation. Don't have that be how you do the tutorial. Learn with tutorials and just get that, that tour through the language, but then make a thing yourself. Like look, it may seem silly, but what if it's just a recipe storing program? Okay, you're making a thing. Or your church runs these big events and they often lose track of how many people are going to be at these things. Make something that tracks that. Or you've got you're a remote control hobbyist into the RC cars, and you've got a hobby group. Why not make a program that people can feature their cars and the pictures of them, or whatever it is. If it's something you're personally interested in, it'll work well, but keep it small in scope. It just needs to be a working project. The senior thing they're going to look for, especially if you're coming from the self-study thing, is have you made a finished product? Doesn't matter if it's ugly, gorgeous, did it work? Did you go from idea to finished execution? Can you describe what that process was like? And they'll know, because if you don't talk about how painful it was at various points, whether you wanted to, bang your head against the wall till you bled from your eyeballs, they know you probably didn't get it done. Because it can take a lot of work to pull off some of these things, right? But that might be my recommendation. Find a way to have some combination of 3 things that's on there that you can talk about, and they'll know you did it. They'll see from the lessons you learned. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yes, yeah.
This might be a little too specific, but with the popularity of CSS frameworks like Bootstrap and stuff like that, how would you suggest for us self-learners to go about learning pure CSS so that we can, number one, I guess my question should be, is it okay to jump to a framework immediately once you understand the basics of how CSS works with selectors, etc.? Would you recommend immediately kind of graduating to a framework approach, or if you were to advise just CSS self-study absent from frameworks, custom style sheets?
Yeah.
What advice would you have for actually, because I've done tons of CSS tutorials, selector specificity, got it all down.
Yeah.
But I need resources for common design patterns and common aesthetic elements that you find, that are on a lot of different kinds of projects.
Right.
Sorry, I'm having a little difficulty articulating.
That's fine. Yeah.
Do you have any specific resources you would recommend for learning those sort of common aesthetic patterns and stuff, the jumbotrons, the stuff, or the
I do, and here's what I'm going to do with this question. I'm going to split off some of the technical stuff very specific to what you're trying to accomplish, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay.
But I do want to, if that's okay.
Yeah.
But I do want to address a really important point that it brought up, which is essentially the approach one has to learning. We have what we consider to be a bottom-up approach here at the Tech Academy. We primarily work with people who mostly have no background in the area. Thank you guys very much, by the way. Appreciate it. Right. And by the way, don't feel bad about leaving. We went over on this. If anybody wants to get up and leave, I'm not going to be offended at all. You guys have been great. Okay. And we're going to end in about 2 minutes here. Oh, there's surveys on that little table right there next to my friend Mike. Be sure to grab a survey if you're not a student and give us more information on how we can actually improve these things. I'd appreciate it. In fact, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to end off on Q&A, right? And on this thing, I'm going to be here, and anybody can come up and talk to me, ask me any kind of questions I want, right? We do have surveys on that table. I really appreciate you guys arriving. I know that probably we could sit around for an hour and I could continue to talk. My staff knows I talk too much, right? Hey, they laugh too hard at that. But again, thank you for coming. I hope this was helpful, and please work on our, Michael will help them with the resumes or the surveys and such.
A quick note, before you guys get up, we actually have Sean Taylor Marquito here, who would like to kind of talk about some opportunities. So, who wants to get a job in the tech industry? Raise your hands. All right, feel free to stay. Listen to Sean. Sean, awesome. You have the floor.
Hey there.
So Marketo is a company about 15 minutes that way. We've been in contact with Tech Academy for a while, and we have several associate positions open. In order to apply for that, just to be really clear, I'd expect that most people would have some sort of either boot camp or a degree, have a little bit of intern experience, and then go ahead and apply. You can come talk to me afterwards about that. I just want to say thank you a lot for this talk. It was enlightening to me, and I agree with most everything you said. So that was
Could you highlight your points of disagreement?
And if it has to do with Star Wars versus Star Trek, we're going to have issues.
Well, it's actually Star Trek Day today. You know that, right? It's Star Trek Day.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
That is awesome.
But I would say some people do care about a degree, some people don't. I'm somebody who does not have a degree. I've been in the industry for 17 years, and that has been a challenge with a few people, but not most people. He's right about it being a guideline when you're looking at 2 years minimum experience. But if you do go in there and you are below that, maybe be able to talk to a little bit. Why does it not matter that you set this bar here? Because I've worked this hard, because I've done these projects, because it matters to me. Be able to come in and speak to that, so that you can say why you still belong to be there, or why you still belong, and why you deserve to be here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I can wait.
No. Okay. But yeah, if you have any questions for me, I read about 50 resumes a day.
I'm sorry.
And I've been hiring. I've hired about 50 people in my career, and I can answer a few questions before you get out. But,
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate that. Yeah.
You probably have 80 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
My coworker Scott Beanie works with Marketo, and
I hired him.
Yeah, and, yeah, he loves working with you guys, so I can say it's a nice person.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Excellent. Okay, is there anything else?
No, I just wanted to, I know people are really concerned about the computer science degree, and I just want to share one story that I found inspirational. We had a student here who was a remote student who came and took our program remotely and she was in Las Vegas. And I worked with her, and she went through 5 separate companies, 4 of which she didn't get hired for. And by this point, by her 5th company, she was kind of downtrodden. It was like I was trying to motivate her, and she came to me and said, "Hey, there's this recruiter has this job. They want a computer science degree, but I don't have one." And I said, "Sylvia, what's the worst going to happen?" They say, "No." That's right. And so she interviewed for it, and they loved her, even though she didn't have a science degree, computer science degree. They hired her on a contract through a recruiter. I do recommend a recruiter as an additional way of looking for opportunities. They hired her. It was a 1-year contract. 6 months into it, they bought the contract out from the firm, which cost them money. It's not free to buy out a contract.
No.
And they gave her a massive pay increase, and she's still there today. So just because they asked for a computer science degree, on the description, it is the unicorn list. If they could have this, they could. And the reality is, what is the worst that's going to happen? Now, obviously, if they're asking for a PhD or a 10 years or 15 years of experience, and you have 0, you might want to consider some proportionality. But I generally recommend the students that are 5 years or less experience, shoot for it.
Yep.
You know, do not limit yourself. Let them decide. So
yeah, don't pre-decide for that.
yeah, exactly. That's all I have. So.
I also wanted to do a quick announcement too. I'm job placement here at the Tech Academy. I'm happy to answer questions for you as well. Feel free to get in contact with us. I know that we're happy to do tours and things like that. Michael may have said something about this already. But going back and forth, I've been very busy today. We had 7 new people get hired this week, so we're very, very pleased. It's a very hot market. There's a lot of interest in hiring new developers, so I just want you to know that. Again, my name is Aaron. Feel free to reach out to us. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. Yeah. Good. Thank you all for coming. If you want to stick around and talk to me, it's totally fine.
And if you could do a survey, we really appreciate it.
how are you? Yeah.